I don't really own too much steampunk stuff, so I'm hoping this is good enough. The necklace at least is cute. I would be wearing the earrings, but they dangled too much. Hi everyone, I'm Asher, they them pronouns, and this is going to be so much fun. This is actually the original reason I wanted to make a YouTube account in the first place. A channel. Gosh, I'm already a little nervous, but I'm hoping as I keep talking, I'll settle down. This is going to be the first of a series of retrospectives for the entirety of Paul Shapera's work. He has made a lot of stuff, so this is going to be a long series, and I'm probably going to dabble in doing other things as well, just to give myself breaks in between, because this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. This series is going to be both for people who are familiar with the series already, as well as newcomers. This isn't going to be made in such a way that it ruins the experience of going in and listening to Paul's work for the first time. I actually think maybe it might help because his stuff is really dense, and sometimes it can be really difficult to follow all of the threads that he lays down the first time you the first time you listen to his work. So I'm also hoping to just kind of spew out all of the things that I've noticed about the things that he makes, because there is so much stuff, there's so much content. I'm not even a music person. I don't know how to read music. I've never studied professionally or anything. I did choir for a few years in high school, but that's it. So I'm not like a really knowledgeable music person, but even I'm able to pick up on music motifs and melodies that come back, and the way that they interweave into the series is just so cool. I love it so much. Of course, before we can get into dolls, we kind of have to go over a quick introduction of what the Shaperaverse even is. I'm going to assume that a lot of people understand the theory of a multiverse, especially with Marvel and the DC Cinematic Universe being things that are just in common knowledge now. It's just the idea that there is a entire series of related stories happening in the same setting, not necessarily, being back to back about the same characters like a proper series is. You all know what that is. Gosh, it's already getting warm in here. I turned off my AC so that the noise wouldn't pick up on the microphone, and I'm gonna die. So the Shaperaverse is a series of musical pop operas. They are all just audios. They're all albums that go in a certain order or have been released in an order, and they interweave with one another. They're never really about the same characters over and over again, but there are repeating characters that show up. It is named such because it is named after the creator, Paul Shapera, who is this weird little gremlin. I guess I should set up my, I wanted a screen here. One moment. Yeah, that'll work. This guy. Anyway, most of Paul Shapera's work and the content within the Shaperaverse follows the city of New Albion, which is this kind of weird, technologically advanced, mythical place that exists somewhere. It's not really important where, just that it exists. And this is where most of his stuff takes place or is interweaved and related into. So that's where we're going to start. With all of these stories being so expansive, it is kind of difficult figuring out where to get into his work, and Dolls is honestly what most people choose as kind of an insert point or a starting area. It's not the earliest in the series as far as chronologically speaking. Sorry about that. But it is the best place to start for the story, and that's how this retrospective is going to go. I definitely want to go through it based off of what I think is the best content to engage with to understand the story. Quick content warning here. Some of Paul's stuff can get rather violent or deal with material that can be upsetting. For this first one, Dolls of New Albion, the worst that happens is there is a brief suicide. It's not dwelt on too much or gone into detail of how it happens, and a murder, and lots of dying. This is about bringing people back from the dead against their will, so, death is kind of pretty common here. But it's still a good time. It's really fun. Okay, with all that preamble done, let's get into The Dolls of New Albion, a steampunk opera. Do 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 do. Dolls of New Albion is the first in a tetralogy of the New Albion Shaperaverse series. As you can see here, I actually really like this design for the albums because it shows how interconnected they are, and circles are really important to this series. Dolls is split up into 4 acts, and rather than following a single character or a single set of characters throughout each act actually is a new generation in the McAllister family. We will get to them as we meet them, of course. Something to note is that while all of Paul Shapera's work is designed to be listened to first and foremost, Dolls is the only one that I've seen that has had stage productions by independent people, really. There's a couple that are up here on YouTube. They're very cool. There's some really creative ideas. I think I really like the one where Jasper is a puppet, which is just really relates back to the original story and whatnot. But I do have my reasons for preferring the audio, not just because it's the original content, but also how it fits into the story thematically, and I'll get to that at the end of this video. Before I really get started talking about the story and the characters, though, and talking about what happens in the play, I do want to talk about New Albion and the setting that exists right at this moment. As I said before, New Albion is a made-up place. It has a lot of mythical logic to it. It exists in a location where there's just a lot of convergence of destiny and fate and interference from otherworldly beings. There's fae folk and alchemy and advanced technology. This is just a strange hub for oddities to happen. The only thing we really know about New Albion's location is that it was set up in the prairies to the north. The north of what? We don't really know yet. It's not too important. But something that I do find interesting is considering the time period that this takes place in. As I said, New Albion is a non-existent place. It's something that Paul made up. It doesn't exist in an alternate Earth. It just exists somewhere. And we'll get into more about that much later down the road. But for now, there is a lot of hints about when this takes place, just looking at the tetralogy and the type of music and naming that exists in the steampunk opera. Okay, I just need my notes for this part. I can't quite memorize it all, sorry. So there are no concrete dates in New Albion other than the eras that they take place, and there are a lot of songs that are labeled New Albion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on throughout the series to give an idea of where this is taking place. But like I said, we don't really have any dates. We do get hints though, and steampunk, the name, really tips us off to where we are, more or less adjacent to American and European history. First of all, steampunk is a genre of sci-fi and subculture that pulls from the industrial era of the 19th century. It's also heavily influenced by the Victorian era, which was from 1837 to 1901, and the Wild West of American history. So I'm really thinking we're looking at the 1800s, that century. I have further reason for that because of the diesel punk opera, which is the one that comes after this. Diesel punk is another genre of sci-fi, which is related to, of course, when diesel started getting used. It's specifically considered the time period between World War I and World War II. That's real, like, diesel punk era, or like where this genre gets pulled from, right? The diesel punk opera also uses a lot of jazz music. It's honestly one of my favorite ones just because of all that jazz music, because jazz is so good. I won't get into that until next episode. I guess this would be called episodes. but the jazz age was from the 1920s, and the 1930s. So that's really tells us where the next one takes place. And I think that gives a lot of evidence to think that Dolls is 1800s. I know we do follow 4 generations, but the average lifespan for people during the 1800s and beforehand was about 47 years. And I'm thinking that each person, if they had their kid between the ages of 20 and 25, that would perfectly fill up a century. So that's what I'm thinking is the time period that we're looking at. And there's also lots of other evidence from the actual story. But, there's the math. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Bye. No, don't actually leave yet, please. Okay, let's actually get into the freaking story now. I'm so excited. I realized I almost forgot to say this. So all of the art that's going to be over here as I'm talking is all done by me. Because all of Paul Shapera's stuff is audio only, there's not really any set designs for what the characters look like. So this is all original me. This is just what I imagine them to look like. Do 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 do. Act 1. Our cast includes the narrator, who exists throughout the entire story. She is very consistent. For those of you who know about her, hush, I'm gonna get to her, okay? We're gonna get to her at the end. Don't worry about it. We also have, of course, the city of New Albion. We have Annabelle McAllister, and we have Jasper. Jasper doesn't get a last name, but he's very important. First song, of course, we get an overture. It's very lovely, and it really introduces us to the vibes of this show and of this story. It's a good introduction to Paul's music. It's kind of weird and has this flair of mystery and whimsy all mixed together, and that little edge of, ooh, something weird's going to happen here. It also introduces us to the New Albion theme, the do 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 do, which exists throughout the entire New Albion series and will get warped as the city itself changes, not necessarily here in this album, but throughout the series as a whole, which again, really cool. I love it so much. Then we get into the second song, New Albion 1. This is our first time ever hearing about New Albion, and it's sung by the narrator. The narrator tells us all sorts of things about the city, starting with the backstory of how it was formed. So she says that several hundred years ago, a gambler and a monk were traveling through the prairies of the north when they started to have a debate about God and chance and fate. The debate got so heated that they actually decided to have a card game about it, and it went on so long that an entire city formed around them because everybody was coming in to see who the fuck was going to win, and an entire fucking city was born. So this is kind of a cool introduction to the type of logic we're working with. This is a very, like I said, myth-heavy setting where things just happen because it seems weird and cool, or it just works with the story. It just seems more interesting that way. So that's how New Albion was born. The narrator goes on to tell us more about modern-day New Albion. There's a mafia that's run by a red-haired dwarf with just one eye. Let's see, there's a union of Zeppelin pilots. There's alchemists. There's a rumor about an aphrodisiac in the fog that causes people to copulate in the morning, which isn't true, but people do it anyway, and, do what you want, everybody. But the main thing that's happening that gets instilled to us through the chorus is Annabelle McAllister, who's raising up the dead. Song number 3, Annabelle Raises the Dead. I actually just got done working on an animatic for this on my other channel. I think it's Not So Evil Genius. So it's actually, not to toot my own horn or anything, it needs a lot of work, but it's pretty good. It's definitely the best one I've ever made. So if you're interested, you can go check that out. Link in the description. So this song is sung by Annabelle. It's our first time meeting her, and this is essentially her I Want song. So she is alone in her lab, surrounded by a bunch of steampunk tech and working on a man-shaped project. Things that we learn about Annabelle throughout this song. So we learn that she was kicked out of school for stealing and experimenting with cadavers. When she was in college, she had one conversation and kiss with a man that she is currently bringing back to life. Like, her entire connection to him is based off of a single interaction, as far as we know. And that's Jasper. Also, after she got kicked out of school, he went on and had his own life. He got married and everything. She does not care. As far as she knows, he is dead, and she has an opportunity to bring him back to life and finally live the happily ever after that she's always longed for. Finally have companionship. The thing about Annabelle, despite her doing this really selfish thing, is that she's honestly a really lonely character, and I find that really compelling and not relatable, but I can't help but feel for her. Like, I wish she could have had a friend. And things went a little differently for her. After Annabelle was expelled, Jasper went off, had his own life, he got married, and then he died, I think in some sort of crash or accident. Either way, something, like, pretty normal, pretty natural. Of course, the song ends with her successfully bringing him back from the dead. Except it's not like him in his own body, it's him in this weird mechanical mannequin, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But first, let's talk about this song and the musicality and certain words and phrases that are actually really important and are going to reoccur later in the story. The first main thing is the My Angel motif. This occurs so much throughout this story. So as Annabelle is working on bringing Jasper back, she constantly refers to him as her angel. She constantly sings, "My angel, my angel, my angel, rescue me." And that's important that she says, "rescue me." She's constantly talking about herself throughout this song. She is very focused on her own wants and needs. She's not thinking about Jasper at all as she's doing this, or about what he maybe would have wanted. My angel will continuously be brought up as people try to communicate or try to long for other people. Oh god, it is so warm in here. I'm sorry. I gotta turn on the AC. It might get a little noisy from here. I'm sorry. I just can't. Another one of the motifs that will reoccur is the "please speak to me" line. This happens during the bridge of this song, where Annabelle is saying, "Please speak to me. Please come back and just speak to me. Just talk to me." She will also say this in later songs, and it will reoccur in later scenes with other characters. Again, there is this longing for connection that is really prevalent throughout this story. It also comes up in a much, much later album in a really cool way, and I can't wait to talk about it in probably years. We'll get there. The other thing I wanted to point out about this song is a couple of really interesting lyrics, I guess. One of the ones I think is the coolest is the characterization of Annabelle. So there's one point where she says, she's talking about how she's all lost in all of her math and theories and numberlands, but now I've reached the goal. And this is going to be really important in a few songs, okay? It's good characterization. It's good hinting at what is to come. And another reason why this series is good for re-listening, because you start making connections. You're like that guy in the meme. Just wow. Annabelle has a doll. This is sung by the narrator, Annabelle, and we get a little bit from Jasper. So it starts with the narrator coming in, explaining that around 3 a.m., Jasper, who was dead just a second ago, is suddenly back in the world of the living, except he's stuck in this weird body that it can't move. It can barely walk, and it can't communicate. The only thing that it can do is it can play a radio. Hey!
What? What the fuck?
Yes, so he is not really a full person the way that he's been brought back, and this body that he's trapped in is referred to as a doll throughout the entire series. Like I said, in my head, it essentially just looks like a mannequin, and that is a horrible thing to be trapped in. One of the things about this song is that it bounces back and forth between the narrator and Annabelle, and then we get a little bit of Jasper's perspective. But the bounce back and forth between the narrator and Annabelle is honestly really interesting. The narrator kind of tries to talk to Annabelle. She says, "What may please does not contend," but most importantly, she says, "All you love does not love you," which is, ouch. And is the moral of the story. It is not a moral that Annabelle learns yet, because Annabelle's just thrilled. Annabelle's just thrilled that she has a friend. She has a dolly, as she refers to it. Again, not a person. Like, she does not refer to him by his name. She's just ecstatic that he is back and he's working. There's also a lot of lines about how thrilled she is that she is successful in one of her experiments. She's dragging Jasper around town, doing all of these fun things, but she's not quite happy. Like, it really sounds like she's trying to convince herself that everything's cool, and it's not. It's not quite to the level of fulfillment that she expected it to be. And I wonder why. We do get more insight into the things that were hinted at about, like, Numberland and Now I've Reached the Goal that Annabelle mentioned before. Specifically, she says things that were very obviously said by other people of, "Annabelle, you must be industrious, you must be the best, you must be successful, or you are worthless." We're gonna learn more about that. We will. Sorry, like I said, I know, there's a lot of nuggets. There's a lot of things that lead one into the other. It's really well done. Jasper tries to talk to her. Remember, he can only play the radio, but he manages to find one that starts to communicate, or maybe it's him learning how to use the radio to make his own words. Anyway, so he tries to talk to her, and he's like, "Hey, bitch, why'd you bring me back here? I was happy where I was. What the fuck?" Annabelle doesn't hear him at first, and the narrator tries to talk again. It still goes over Annabelle's head. But eventually, at the end of the song, the "won't you speak to me," the "please speak to me," comes back from Annabelle as she realizes that she's still lonely and she's still missing that feeling of connection that she longed for so much. And she finally hears Jasper when he's like, "Why'd you bring me here? Oh, why'd you bring me here again?" And Annabelle is shattered. This leads us to Annabelles Lament, which is all sung by Annabelle. This is surprising. No, it's not. I'm lying. TLDR of this song is that Annabelle has daddy issues. This is going to be a theme. Maybe not always daddy issues, but, like, definitely parent issues. We learn from Annabelle that she was super lonely and depressed as a child because her father was like, "Girl, you don't need fucking friends. What are you, an idiot? No, you need to study and work hard and learn your numbers and go do something successful so that you can actually be worth anything." Which, the fuck, dude? And we can totally understand why Annabelle maybe has a complex about having trouble making connection and not having any friends and being an incredibly lonely person. Also, again, tying back to all of those desires to be successful, to do something amazing, something that shows that she is worth existing. Hence the incredibleness of bringing somebody back to life, which is really, really impressive. But, you know, he doesn't want to be here. And it doesn't fix her loneliness. I also like how the whole song, the chorus specifically, is Annabelle in Numberland, which is a nice reference to Alice in Wonderland. I think that's very cool. This song also has the return of the My Angel motif. She's constantly singing, you know, "You could have been my angel, my angel, my angel, and rescued me, oh." Like, it's incredible. I love the singer's performance. Lauren's performance is so great because it sounds so desperate the more and more it goes. Like, you really, when you get into it, you really feel how hurt and heartbroken Annabelle is and how much she wanted this one person to be able to just fix all of her sorrows. But that's not how life works, and that's not how love works, unfortunately. The song is just riddled with regrets from her life. Like, she is constantly talking about ghosts, ghosts of dreams, ghosts of who she could have been. And I just, like, it's just really beautiful. It's so lyrically and poetically beautiful. I love it so much. Again, this really speaks to Shapera's talent for characterization. His rhymes don't always land, but I think that's because he always favors characterization and what is more in line with the character than what maybe fits into a lyric. That doesn't mean that his music isn't still beautiful and amazing, okay? I really like it. It's not going to be for everybody, but there's so much variety in his content that I think you'll find something if you like musicals. I really do. Some of the lines that I particularly like from the song are constructed like well-penned plays, which is a great callback to the meta-textual narrative that is happening right now, that this is a play in a certain sense, as well as failure holds your hand till death. Oh my god, that's such a good line. And then in this moment of grief in this song, as it gets to the build-up and the chorus as she's singing my angel, again, super desperate sounding, super heartbroken, she destroys Jasper's doll with an axe. It is a moment both of grief and mercy, and Jasper is now dead again. Womp womp. He's back in the afterlife. Yeah, so back to Elysium he goes. Doo 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 doo. So we get to the last song of Act 1 called We Bid the First Generation Adieu. It is sung by the narrator. Essentially, it's very brief. It just tells us that Annabelle destroys the doll. She goes back to her lab. She hides all of her notes about Jasper and about bringing him back from the dead so that nobody will ever find it. And she kind of just goes on with her life, being all by herself in the lab. And now it's time for Act 2. Yay! Do 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 do. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm sitting on the floor. I think it's really obvious with the shelves. And this is not the most comfortable. Act 2. So our main cast, of course, is the narrator again, and we have Faye and Edgar McAllister. That's right, another McAllister in the game. Starting with New Albion 2. Which is, of course, sung by the narrator again, and follows the same tune as the first one did. We're on to the next generation. Annabelle eventually finally got married, and she had a son, who's Edgar. This guy here. I don't know why I drew him to look so fucking hot. Because you're gonna learn not to like him, okay? He's not a good person. But when he was 10 years old, Annabelle died, and he was heartbroken, but he's gone on to meet Faye, and they are now engaged to be married. In Mafia news, the son killed his dad to take over, and his dad was so proud of him. Again, really great characterization for something that only appears in like 3 lines. There's some famous cat burglars that are going about the town that the police can't catch, but it's actually just 2 18-year-old girls, an albatross, and a brilliant mouse named Sam. The brilliant mouse will come back. Eventually. Long time from now. Yeah, and that's New Albion right now. Everything's pretty bustling. Not much has changed. Yet. Alright, so we're on to song number 8 called Edgar Gets His Heart Broken. I wonder what's gonna happen. So this is sung by Edgar and Faye in... I guess it's technically a duet, but this isn't like a love song or anything. This is a slow ballad wherein Edgar is at dinner with Faye. He is so happy, he thinks everything's great, and then she's like, by the way, I'm leaving you for another man. And he's like, what? We get this mostly from Edgar's point of view. He's very disassociative throughout this scene. Honestly, it's really relatable. He's focusing more on the food, on like what he would have had for dessert. I love the line, I would have had the lime pie, but I was dying inside. Gosh, it's so melodramatic. I love it so much. Edgar's heartbreak is really understandable. The decisions he makes from that heartbreak are not, okay? They're not. This guy's kind of a fucker. I kind of love him though, but he's, god damn it. Boo, Edgar, boo. He's also iconic. We're going to get to that at the end of this act. We're introduced to a new musical motif, though. One day you will learn, and you will burn like my heart burns. That's gonna come up a lot later. Very important. I do like how it has this tinge of vengeance to it, of anger. It is really kind of a grumpy thing, okay? This is not a good feels here. We get to the next song, called The Old Trunk in the Attic. Edgar wanders home, and the narrator follows him. The narrator sings most of the song until the very end, so we're just gonna follow what she says. Edgar wanders into the attic, and he finds this trunk that's just full of old family memorabilia. There's a lot of hints again at the sorrow of this family, of all the heartaches that have really happened. We have grandmother's broken heart and ballet shoes. We have a dead soldier's cross, a hardly worn child's dress, tears from a name you'll never learn. Again, really beautiful lyrics. It's just lovely. There's all this talk of loss, right, in this family. But then he finds his mother's notebook with the formula for bringing back the dead. And a crazy notion goes into his head. Yeah, that's partially lyrics from the song. I also like how it uses the same tune from New Albion 1 of Annabelle's formula for raising up the dead, which is the same as it was in the first song, where it was Annabelle McAllister who's raising up the dead. The next song is called Edgar Builds a Business. It is sung by Edgar and the narrator. It is honestly a really fun song. I really like Edgar's voice, but what he does, he's such a terrible person at this point. I particularly love the movement of the song. There's a lot of sweeping strings and da 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 da, which is another reference to the New Albion theme, and really shows how he is affecting the entire city. Not just a small thing, but the whole fucking city. After testing Annabelle's formula for raising up the dead on who knows who, we don't really know, but I have a theory.
I've got a theory.
And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But he finds that the formula, of course, proves a success. And so he comes up with an idea to start a business, bringing back people's loved ones from the dead in these fancy dolls. And of course it works. Honestly, he does pretty good as a whole salesman here. He starts off by going into some sort of, shopping district, and he announces to everyone, he's like, I can bring back your dead. Oh, you don't believe me? Here, I'll pick 5 people at random and I'll bring back somebody for them for free as samples so that you'll see that this is true. And of course he does that, and some time passes by and there's a huge crowd of people, and he's like, hey everyone, we've gotten so successful that we're opening factories for this. Nothing like the capitalization of our loved ones and of the dead. That's great. He's also offering new deals and new features, so you can get your dead now in mahogany, lilac, deep oak, and red. Such a good time. More time passes by, and we're now at a board meeting where Edgar's like, hey everyone, we are super successful. Our business is booming. I have one favor to ask of you. There's a man called Siloff, and he once stole my girl. I want you to fucking destroy him, financially speaking. And so they do. Like, they go ruin his life. At the end of the song, the narrator comes back with the thing that she tried to say to Annabelle once more of, all you love does not love you. But of course, Edgar doesn't hear her. Faye meets with Edgar at the actual end of the song. I'm sorry, I skipped over a little bit. And he's like, baby, the guy you left me for is in ruins. Why don't you come back? And by the way, if you're not interested in actually coming back, I brought your dad back to life, and you can only see him if you marry me. That's right, babe. Blackmail. Nothing hotter. TLDR, Edgar is blackmailing this woman to marry him by holding her father's soul hostage. Is this where I mentioned sexy Edgar? Faye considers Edgar's proposal. This, of course, is sung by Faye. It starts with kind of this melancholy moment of her reflecting on how excited she once was for one of their dates. In the past, there used to be genuine feeling and affection between the two, and now she does not understand how he could prove himself to be so deplorable. And it rolls into a return of the "one day you will learn and you will burn like my heart burns." Yeah, that gets a comeback. Hey, editing Asher. I realized I forgot to mention that Faye's dad, who has been brought back, is Jasper. Same Jasper from Act 1. This is important. Remember how I mentioned that we don't really know who he experimented on to bring people back? I think that one of the first people he brought back was Jasper. I really do. I think that that's one of the people he experimented on to see if the formula was successful. And so that sucks. Who knows where Jasper has been in this whole scenario? I think it's been a couple years that have gone by since Jasper started his business. And she agrees to Edgar's proposal. She gets married to him and gets to see her dad again. And like I said, her dad is Jasper. So he's back. Yay! And now he gets to watch his only daughter enter into a loveless marriage because of him. Yay! I'm sure he's thrilled about that. Poor guy. Act 3! I'm lying. Before we get to Act 3, I really want to talk about the sexy Edgar meme. So this happened in 2020 where someone made fan art of Edgar wearing Gucci, and it just kind of spawned some like jokes about him being sexy Edgar. It got to the point where they actually made a Discord for it. One of the really parts that were funny enough to make it onto the Shaperaverse wiki was somebody who said, "Oh, Edgar, bend me over and pretend you just found out I'm cheating on you with Psylocke." It did get big enough that there was an art contest that the creator Shapera held, and the winner was this beautiful piece of art of sexy Edgar and Uncle Raven. Uncle Raven is a fan favorite. He's actually one of the he's one of the oldest characters who's existed in this fandom. Not like, I mean, he's not old, but like he's been here the longest. He's a very original character. Then Paul used that fan art as the image for a video he posted titled, I think it was titled, "You Should Not Be Listening to This." I'm sorry, I forgot to write it down. Paul's such a good sport. He's so cool with his fandom. I love him. Okay, now Act 3. Do 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 do. Cast of Act 3. We of course have the narrator again. And then we have Jasper, Byron, and Amelia. New Albion 3. What's going on with New Albion? It's covered in dead people. It's fine. The narrator starts by saying that Edgar and Faye had a son named Byron. He hates his dad. Understandably, actually, because his mother fucking hates him too. And I feel like Byron's kind of a mama's boy. He inherits Jasper, the doll, and I don't know if Byron is aware that Jasper is his grandfather. I really don't know. We're gonna get into why in a minute. It's just weird. It's a weird time. Also, Byron is in a new group, a new political religious movement, which, you know, always a good combo there, called the Voodoo Punks, with his friend Amelia. Amelia's in love with him. He's gay, so he doesn't notice. Also, he might be in love with his grandfather. Or it's displaced daddy issues. Somewhere in there. Something in there. Like I said, I don't know if he knows Jasper is his grandfather. I don't know. Other aspects of New Albion, of course, is that there are dolls everywhere. After years of people buying into this business, there are slums full of these dolls that people tried to project their loved ones onto, and I guess it didn't work because, you know, they're not able to do anything. Like, they can't speak, they can't move, they're just mannequins holding souls inside them like a vase. They can't do anything. Other things to know about New Albion. The redhead mafia boss has been run out of town by 2 women and a brilliant mouse named Sam. I told you they'd be back. The thing with the Voodoo Punks, again, weird cultural, political, religious movement. They're running a doll for mayor. That'll go well. Song number 13, The Movement 1. This is sung by Byron and Amelia. This gives us a sneak peek into the Voodoo Punks and the vibes of the Voodoo Punks. They are a really good time. The voodoo punks cause so much problems in this entire plotline, not just dolls, but the tetralogy, and then even further, like, the dolls and the voodoo punks cause issues. They have a ripple effect, okay? First of all, with the movement, the music is just gorgeous. Again, Paul is a good musician. I do think that his stuff gets stronger as he goes on, but there are such nuggets of really wonderful musicality in these parts that I can't help it. I swooned. I love it so much. It's so good. We get the first taste of the Voodoo Punk's Dale motif, which will transform throughout the series. It's another one of those. Byron wants Jasper to love him back, very similar to the way that Annabelle wanted him to love her back. I don't know if it's the same type of love. I don't know if it's romantic love or if it's just a platonic love. Byron has daddy issues. He does not like his dad, and there is some talk about how Byron's love for Jasper is possibly just misplaced desire for affection from his dad that he cannot have from any kind of fatherly figure. Either way, Byron really cares about Jasper, wants a connection, and Jasper is dead silent because he's dead and he's miserable and he's been around for decades now and he's not having a good time. Byron also seeks escape from his father's world. It's a line that he says a few times. This is why he's in the Voodoo Punks. He is rebelling. I'm going to get into the Voodoo Punks in a bit, okay? I also think Byron saying that line of "we reject our father's world" refers both to what his father has done to the city of New Albion as a whole. Again, dolls are everywhere. Nobody knows what death means anymore. Like, what does it matter? It's just really weird and confusing. That would do something to your brain of just being like, how the fuck do we, like, mentally process this, emotionally process this, as well as his home life, where, again, Faye is not happy. Like, she fucking hates him. She got blackmailed into a terrible marriage, and she is not quiet about it, I'm sure. Meanwhile, Amelia sings a similar thing, except she sings to Byron. She wants Byron to not necessarily love her. She understands that he probably won't, but she just wants a friend. She just wants to be noticed, wants somebody to be there for her. I really wish Byron was a better friend. Like, I know that he's gay and he has no romantic interest in her, but he is while he is probably one of the best of the McAllister family, he is a bit self-centered and a little bit of a dummy. And this causes problems. This causes him to not notice that Amelia is just longing for anything, any kind of connection to rescue her from her father's world. Either way, both find some means of escape within the Voodoo Punks. Which brings us to the next song, Voodoo Punk, sung by the Voodoo Punks, Byron and Amelia. This is just an example of a night with this group. There's dancing, drugs, sex, and spiritual possession. Just a good old time. It's a real party, people. I did want to note, though, while it is called Voodoo Punks, it is not voodoo and hoodoo in the same way that the actual existing religion/spiritual practice is. It's kind of just using the word and, like, influences. There's a little bit of ideas from voodoo and then a little bit of ideas from old Celtic lore. It's a mishmash of everything. I don't know if it would be considered appropriation or not, but because it doesn't really have anything actually to do with it, and there's no, I don't know where that lands. I don't think I'm the person to talk about that. I think it's just a name. Moving on. So the lyrics themselves directly refer to the Sidhe, which are, of course, the fairy folk in Irish mythology. They also call upon a figure called Arwen. I can read my handwriting, I swear. Which is an old Welsh name. The Wen part specifically means holy, blessed, or related to saints. Or Anwen? The Voodoo Punks movement has notes of the Sidhe, of Welsh mythology, Irish mythology, voodoo, just like little notes of these things, but the main thing about the Voodoo Punks as a movement is they kind of reflect the changing social perspective on death and the dolls. One of the key aspects, I think, as a budding religious movement is that the dead exist among them, meaning that Elysium and other worlds must exist as well. More on their political and religious values in the next song, Movement 2, sung by Amelia, Byron, and the narrator. Lots of returning melodies from Movement 1. It really is just a part 2 of that, which is why it's called Movement 2. Lots of continuation, plus some earlier motifs. Amelia starts the whole "all I ask for is a friend" towards Byron. She also says "as we flee our father's world," which is different from Byron's, which is "as we reject our father's world." Both of them return with Annabelle's "can't you speak to me," which I said would be important. I said it would come back. Here it is. It's back. I do say something I think is so pretty about this song is the part where it sings, "At the crossroads and the barrow, we have come to court the shadows." The way Crossroads lifts so lightly is just beautiful. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention is that in Movement 1, there was a scene where Byron gives a political speech about how they're running a doll for mayor. And we get another one of those in this movement. Byron launches into his speech. It's very relatable to modern times, not really in a good way, but I think the thing about the voodoo punks that I don't really vibe with is that they are very burn it all down without providing like an actual solution. Very relatable. This idea of just anarchy, of just rebellion, but that's all it feels like it is in this time period. The voodoo punks, they're just like, we're surrounded by death and destruction, and the politicians of the world are terrible. There's leeches sucking you dry to the bone, zombies bleed you dry out of their heads, like lots of kind of OG Tim Burton vibes going on, right? But again, it doesn't feel like there's any real plan to replace this system, just to reject it, to rebel against it. And that's really what Byron's vibe is, and the voodoo punks follow suit. It just comes off as immature, and that is the way that I feel about Byron. I feel like he is kind of an immature kid, despite being very likable. So at the end of the song, Byron pushes Jasper up onto the stage and is like, "Here, let us hear a speech from the candidate. Go on." Our doll who can't talk? Like, what? But the narrator explains that over the decades of Jasper being a doll, he has managed to figure out how to compile bits of radio, of recordings, of sounds to make his own song. And he plays that in order to try to communicate with everyone what he actually wants. And he sings Elysium Night. Why do I keep saying nights? Night. Singular. Starting pretty slow, Elysium Night is, of course, sung by Jasper. It's one of the few songs that he sings. I think it's the only one he sings by himself. It's definitely the only one he sings by himself. He tries to express what his existence was like in the afterlife. And the afterlife in this setting is called Elysium. So it's named after one of the Greek afterlives, Elysium, which is the good one. And as Jasper describes it, it is essentially a place where everything is peaceful, where everything is quiet and content, and you're all one big happy blob. And it's like the ideal idea of a heaven afterlife. It is good, sorrow ends, there's no more suffering, and he just wants to go back. That's all he wants. He does not give a shit about being fucking mayor, Byron. Quick content warning for the next song. It is called The Suicide. Again, we don't get any details about what it's like. We just get a little bit of insight into who it is and why they're doing it. A little bit of content warning for parental abuse as well. I guess I'll put a little tick-tick, little doobly-doo for getting past this song. So this song is sung by the narrator and Amelia. The narrator explains that Jasper, who, he gave his speech on a podium, presumably with a microphone that was broadcasting it to other parts of the city. And you know how the dolls can pick up radio waves? All of the dolls in these slums throughout New Albion who are just littering the streets, they picked up his song and they're like, oh my god, that's how I feel. I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna play it forever. So the entire city is being plagued by this song about how they just want to die. They just want to go back to heaven. They just want to go back to Elysium. We can understand, I think, how that might have a negative effect on somebody who is not in a very happy or stable home life. Cut to Amelia. So remember how I noted that Amelia wants to escape her father's world? She lives alone with her father, as far as I can tell. Her mother is dead. We get a very short but aggressive audio clip of Amelia's father yelling at her. He calls her a whore. He tells her that her mother would be absolutely ashamed to see her if she was still alive. It's just, horribly emotionally abusive things. Like, things you should never say to a person, let alone your daughter. And then he leaves. And Amelia listens to the song Elysium Nights that's playing by the dolls, and she feels a deep compassion, and she just longs for any kind of escape. She writes a suicide note that is literally just the lyrics of the dolls' song, and she kills herself. All of that happens in this one song, and it's only 2.5 minutes. There's so much content jammed into these little songs. The next song is called Bonfire of the Dolls. It is sung by the narrator and Byron. And the crowd, I guess. But they're not really a character. In the aftermath of Amelia's death, everybody's real upsetty spaghetti with the dolls. I do have a criticism of this because this is totally how people work. Instead of everybody taking a moment to really kind of consider why she might have done this and maybe how there was a problem with her home life, everybody immediately starts criticizing the dolls and thinking it's their fault that all of this happened. And there is an underlying tension that is building throughout the town. A tension that the Voodoo Punks and Byron are oblivious to. Cuts to another speech that Byron is giving, and oh boy, does he not read the room. He's continuing his classic speech using a lot of death metaphor and death talk. He says the line, "Your kids are sleeping each night with the dead," and that sparks a fucking riot. It's so funny because everybody starts, the whole crowd starts screaming, kill the dolls, after they heard this speech where, again, Byron makes it sound like the dolls are going to fucking take over, and they can't even move. God, he's so dumb. He's a good dummy, but he's a dummy. I love the part afterwards where he's like, now hold on, this isn't at all what we mean. But it's too late, and the entire crowd has burst into a riot and are picking up all of the dolls that they can find and throwing them into giant bonfires and burning them. And this is happening throughout the entire city. It spread so fast. Meanwhile, as all of this chaos is happening, I can imagine there are some people who, of course, still love their dolls. That's their person, that's their loved one they brought back from the dead, and they, still love them, even if the doll wants to go back home. So I imagine there are some people, like, fighting, trying to get to the dolls to destroy them, and there's other people that are trying to protect their dolls. There's Byron, who's running around screaming the angel motif. Oh yeah, like just yelling in the middle of this, just, where's my angel? Until eventually he finds Jasper and manages to save him and survive the riot. And that's the end of that song. It is also technically the end of Act 3, but we have a little intermission song in between this scene and Act 4 that I don't know exactly whether to put in either one because it doesn't quite fit in either one, but we'll put it at the end of Act 3 here. So it is called The Ballad of the Gambler and the Monk. Remember the Gambler and the Monk who were mentioned in the first New Albion song? The people who essentially created New Albion by accident? This is sung by the narrator, and it is essentially a deeper look into this folklore, into this story of the origin of New Albion. It is kind of hammered home how they had, again, this debate about God and chance and fate, and agreed that it would be dealt with through one card game. Now, they played this card game for what I can assume is years, because an entire fucking town formed around them. It also might have just been that little bit of like God and fate intermingling with this, but either way, they play this card game for a long fucking time until finally the gambler has the winning hand, and just as he's about to play it, he dies. With his last breath, he swears that the game isn't over, and eventually they will continue their play. Do 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 do. Ugh, I had to pause to grab a cushion, cause the floor is hurting my butt. Act 4, the fourth and final act. I don't know why I lifted my thumb to make it a 5. 4. Our main cast for this one. We've got the narrator again, got Jasper still, we've got Priscilla, and we've got Soldier 7285. We're gonna see if I actually get that number memorized before I get to the end of this video, because I keep having to double check. I keep thinking I'm gonna like accidentally Jean Valjean it and be like, New Albion 4, sung by the narrator, and a little bit of Soldier 7285. See, I'm already getting it messed up. What has happened in New Albion? I will say that the tone, the sound of this song is already vastly different from the previous 3 New Albions, which were pretty like upbeat and just like, hey, here's what's going on around town. This is a lot more serious, a lot more somber, because New Albion is currently under a martial rule. That's the word. The government is holding it on strict lockdown. There are lots of police. There are lots of patrolling. It is not a good time. Things that we learn is that Byron got married to someone. According to the Shapera wiki, her name is Charlotte.
Charlotte?
Oh, Sam?
Where am I? Why am I tied to a chair?
So, here she is. Her name never gets mentioned, but her name is Charlotte. She doesn't get any singing roles. She's just here. They got married and they had a daughter named Priscilla. Also, Charlotte, according to the wiki, does know that Byron is gay and she's cool with that. And, apparently their relationship is good enough that they were able to figure out the whole having a kid thing. And the other things we learn is that the riots caused a shit ton of damage throughout the city, enough to make the government want to put the city under strict military rule. Also, dolls have been strictly outlawed. Any doll who is found is immediately destroyed, and anyone who is with that doll disappears. They get killed off as well. I don't know about you, but that seems a little extreme. Jasper as a doll and Priscilla, living with said doll, are both secret fugitives. So they spend their time hiding at home and playing a game of cards. Where have I heard that before? I am going to be using my notes a little more from now because I'm on a time limit. I'm trying to finish before my partner has to get back to work because they just came home a little earlier than I expected, and I don't want to be rude. So next song is Priscilla and Jasper Play Cards, sung by Priscilla, Jasper, and Soldier 7285. The main focus of this, of course, is what Jasper and Priscilla's life and their relationship looks like. I really like how it begins with this tick-tocking noise, which I feel like is a good callback to how they are on limited time and how they have endless time. They are just stuck in this room forever playing cards. From the song, we learned that Priscilla is pretty much just happy to be here with Jasper. She loves Jasper. She loves spending time with Jasper. There's not really anywhere else that she would rather be. Meanwhile, Jasper, who seems to have been a doll long enough to really develop a way to communicate finally of his own accord, is like, the only reason I'm alive is so that you don't die. I really wish I wasn't here, but I do love you because you remind me of my daughter. I don't know how she's supposed to take that. She doesn't really know how she's supposed to take that either. Meanwhile, in the song, Soldier 7285 is patrolling with the other police. I think there are some raids that happen kind of in the scene. The most important thing is to just be aware that the police are patrolling and that they are dangerous. During the soldier's part, he does mention fate and prayer, important ideas. After Jasper confesses that he is only alive because he does not want the person he loves to die, Priscilla is soaking this in She doesn't understand why he would want to sacrifice himself, like why he would sacrifice his own desires and happiness like that for her. She calls him my angel. There's the return of that. And she essentially is like, you're alive so I don't die. What kind of twisted sacrifice is that? Priscilla contemplates. Obviously sung by Priscilla. This is a beautiful but kind of slow, somber, very serious ballad where Priscilla contemplates the different ideas of love and how people express it in different ways. They express it as desire, as a fire. I did not mean to rhyme, but here we are. But the main thing she comes down to is that some people sacrifice. That some people, as an expression of love, they sacrifice everything they want. They sacrifice their love. And obviously, she's thinking about and talking about Jasper. Jasper, who was sacrificed. I mean, I don't know if I'd really call it sacrificing because, like, he can't do anything. He can barely move. But either way, he is sacrificing right now his own happiness in order to keep Priscilla alive. Because he just wants to go back to Elysium and be happy again. And nobody has thought about him. I think that's the other key part, is that nobody in all of this, these songs in each generation has ever thought about what he wanted. They've never put him first. They're always thinking about themselves. It's the McAllister way. They are sad but selfish. I really like the line, with one dear doll who keeps you from crying but cries too. It's a good line. So at the end of Priscilla Contemplates, she comes to a decision and she calls the police and she's like, there's a felony. You need to see it. Come to my place ASAP. And she hangs up. Jasper, of course, hears this. This begins the song The Day They Come, which is sung by everybody. And it's great. Like, this is the culmination of this is the climax. This is the culmination of everything really coming together. And so we have everybody singing different parts, different important parts from the previous acts that were important, and they come together here. So we start with the narrator opening with circles never stop themselves. Her kind of main thing where she tries to communicate, and the sometimes when you lose, you win line, right? Very important. Jasper, of course, is horrified at what Priscilla has done because he knows the police are going to kill her. It's the only thing that's the only reason that he's kept going. They start singing over each other. Priscilla talking about love and sacrifice, a continuation of her contemplation from the previous song. Jasper singing about ghosts and selfishness and games. Soldier 7285 comes in because he's on his way with all of the other police officers, singing, on the day we come, it's over. And this theme, the police theme, the on the day we come, it's over, is another thing that becomes a repetitive motif throughout the entire series to signal that they're police or something adjacent to. It's really great. I love the way it transforms throughout the series. My favorite part is probably the way it changes in the hippie punk opera. It's really funny. We'll get to that when we get to that. And Jasper starts singing the one day you will burn from Act 2, which is purely desperate at this point. Priscilla sings about love and sacrifice. Some more, some sacrifice. Again, from her contemplation. Jasper sings the My Angel motif, which is the first time that he's sang this, and he's really driving home that she is the only one that he's cared for since Faye, and he's begging her to do anything to save herself. After so many decades of people singing My Angel to him, of asking him to be the one to save them, he's finally found somebody that he wants to save, and he sings the My Angel, just begging her to just go, just do anything, just leave. Soldier 7285 and the police are closer, they're on the doorstep. Priscilla's voice takes over the song to sing the chorus from Annabelle Raises the Dead, but instead of saying, please come back, she says, please go back. Finally, at the end there, it is Priscilla who sings the line from the narrator, the one that she tried to tell to previous people to warn them of what was going to happen. And yes, I'm using my phone because I could not remember what the lyrics were, but it's the circles never stop themselves, nothing that you've ever held, were you promised or reneged, and sometimes when you lose, you win. And then the police shoot her and Jasper. They both die. They both get shot down, except Soldier 7285 does not shoot. And we get to the second to last song, I Will Bring You Down, sung by Soldier 7285. Immediately after this immediately after this task, Soldier 7285 is questioned and court-martialed because he did not shoot. They repeatedly ask him over and over, why didn't you fire? Finally, we get to his inner monologue where he's like, I saw her face. I saw how content and willing she was to die, how full of love she was, and I just couldn't shoot. And it causes him to completely reevaluate his life. He's like, man, if we're killing off people like that, if we're just killing her for no reason, then what the fuck are we doing? And so he decides that he is going to bring down the government. And he does this nice big, I will bring you down. Like, it's very fun time. And that's kind of where the story closes, with this police officer being like, I am so moved that I'm going to destroy the government. Woo. And we get to the last song, which is We Bid You All Adieu, sung by the narrator. There's not really much to this song other than exactly what the title says. She says goodbye. There's stories for another time, but right now we are done with this story. Thanks for coming to the play. And the future is always on its way. That's a term and an idea that will return on other albums. And that is the end of The Dolls of New Albion. Yay! Do 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 do. So that was a grand, wild, wacky old time, but of course there are some really cool other things to talk about now that we've covered the whole thing, starting with who the fuck the narrator is. This is Kate, and she's actually from a completely different narration. She is what's called a posthuman, which we learn a lot more about in the future albums. You'll notice that I say that a lot, but we really do. We don't really start getting introduced to the idea that the narrator is its own character, are their own characters, until Diesel Punk, and the way they do that is so cool. I love it so much. But for this one, I think it is cool and important to know that Kate is a character, not just a random omniscient narrator, right? She is part of the play, and so each of the times that she does try to communicate with the other characters, it is genuinely her trying to communicate with them, except she doesn't try hard enough to really change what is destined to happen like some of the other posthumans do. She kind of has a philosophy that stories are meant to play out as however they're naturally supposed to when she does narrations. So she doesn't toy with them very often, but she does have that ability. So what are the posthumans? Posthumans are people. They were originally just regular humans who at some point had some sort of psychological break. And instead of falling into insanity or dying or whatever traumatic event caused this to happen, they went through what's called a flowering and discovered their new posthuman powers. The posthumans are immortal. They have the ability to change what is called the narrative, which is essentially reality of whatever setting they're in. But they can't change it too much. There are kind of rules and restrictions based off of just how the story is supposed to go. So, like, for example, they can't just wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey crash in and change it however they want. They're not gods yet. But they can influence and they can flex them. They can, like, nudge them in certain directions as long as the narrative thinks it's interesting enough. There's a lot of, like, loosey-goosey kind of rules about it, and this is also part of the reason that they end up taking on roles that are related to stagecraft and plays, because it's a lot easier for the narrative to respond to them if they are part of the story that is happening. Most times they take on the role of the narrator, but sometimes it might be other roles, and we'll get more into that later. The other interesting thing, I think, is that they can jump around time and narratives. So there are, like, alternate realities that they can just hop into. There's also layers to reality. So, like, as far as I understand it, the higher up in the layers you go, the more reality gets weird and the rules get more flexible, but also the more it taxes your psyche, because they are still originally human. They have limited minds or capacity for understanding the complexities of the metaverse, which is what it's called. Shaperaverse, the metaverse, all of that. Like I said, we'll get way more into that later in the show, but I think it's just really interesting to be aware that Kate is an actual person. She's not just narrating things. She's actually there. Sort of. Also, just kind of a fun little fact, Kate also narrated a pirate album, picture here, and a nearby alternative narrative that she got a girlfriend in and had a generally good-ass time. Let's talk about the themes of this play, because there's a lot of stuff that's happening here, right? I think probably one of the most prominent tones, it's not quite an undertone or an overtone, it's just a tone, is the influence of Christianity in this play. I don't know Paul's affiliation, but I know that each of the main three of the tetralogy of this set, of the Dolls set, are influenced by different aspects of religion or spiritual thinking. So, like, I know that the first one, Dolls of New Albion, is kind of contemplating on Christianity, and then Dieselpunk is contemplating on Buddhism, although I still don't understand how. I think about it every time, and I'm still just like, I don't think I know enough about Buddhism to get it. And then the third one, Adam Punk, is atheism. So I don't think that this story and this play is necessarily supposed to be like pro or against or have any kind of messaging about these religions. I just think they are influences, which is kind of neat. Obviously, the big part of how that comes into play is the language that gets used. So there's the my angel bit, there's how prayer gets mentioned, fate. There is probably most obviously how everything gets resolved, which is Priscilla literally becoming a martyr and sacrificing herself in order to free other people. And this begins the revolution that the soldier starts that sets off the next album. So, that's a nice little bit of a Jesus allegory there. There's also just the whole idea of resurrection. Actually, a really cool thing that I did in the animatic that I made on Annabelle Raises the Dead is I used Easter lilies as a big part of the science / alchemy of how she was doing that, which are a symbol of resurrection. Easter, Jesus, all of that stuff. So that's a nice little fun fact, I think. The other big theme that I'm sure I mentioned a few times already is the idea of circles. You can already see it in this design of the tetralogy, which is so cool. I love it so much. I love the circles. Very good. The idea of circles plays out throughout the entirety of Paul Shapera's work. It's a really reoccurring thing. Haha, circles, wheels, who would have thought? In this one, it comes up in how each generation repeats the same mistake over and over again. This is also why I think the fact that all the characters are played by the same 4 actors actually adds to this theming and this idea, because again, these are characters that are reoccurring. These are characters who, despite being different, despite being a new generation, they keep making the same mistake over and over again of trying to make people love them that don't. Like, because you can't force other people to love you. You have to just hope that it happens naturally. I'm getting tired. I'm so sorry. Give me a second. This is also said pretty explicitly by Kate, the narrator, where she talks about circles. Circles never stop themselves. And this is why Priscilla is the one who's finally able to break the cycle, because she's the one who learns the lesson of sometimes when you lose, you win. She's the first one of the McAllister line who thinks about something other than herself and is willing to put herself before that person. That's such a good message. I love it. The other big kind of themes and ideas that are really more obvious, probably love, loss, and sacrifice. They are just riddled throughout this thing. It's, again, related back to that circular element where all of the McAllisters lose something and then they try to get it back and they try to hold on to it, but it's just not working. It's just not how it goes, and they reap consequences from those things. Another big thing is, of course, daddy issues and mommy issues, which I think can relate back to Christianity a little bit. That might be mean. I don't know if that's mean. One of the things that I think is so fun, and I definitely kind of mentioned throughout talking about this, is how Paul characterizes everybody and how human and relatable they feel, despite it just being such a high concept situation. Like, this is a bonkers story, but the thing that really grounds it is how relatable the characters are. Like, you feel the characters when they are singing. You feel how sad they are, how angry they are, all of the complexities of their emotions, and it is just so fun, and it hits me in the feels every time. Oh, I did want to mention the singers, but I forgot to write any of them down. Lauren Osborne is definitely the one who's one of the most well-known in the fandom. She does Annabelle, she does Faye, Amelia, and Priscilla. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. Priscilla in the play. She's also she ends up being the lead singer in a bunch of Paul's stuff. Paul did the voice of Jasper in this, so that's a fun time. And then let me look up the other singers. Kaylee McKnight is the voice of Kate. Jason Broderick was the voice for all of the other male characters. Yep, Edgar Byron and Soldier 7285. There we go. We'll put them all up here. Yay, kudos, good job guys. Loved all your voices, loved all your work. Well, I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for going through this. Anybody who watched this and hasn't listened to Dolls of New Albion, I would say to go listen to it. I didn't talk too much about the songs other than the ones where I'm like stuff that I really like or the repeating of motifs. Again, I'm not a music person, so I can't say, but I do love all the songs. I love singing along with it, and there's certain times where the lyricism is just wonderful and I can't get over it. So I would say go listen to it. It's not very long. I think it's about 90 minutes and it's available here on YouTube and on Spotify and on Bandcamp. You can find it. Go give it a listen. Go check it out. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. If you really did, I can't believe it. Wow, you are dedicated. And if you like this, then please leave a comment. Give me your thoughts. I'm sure there's stuff that I missed because there's just so much going on here. And I would like friends, but I don't know how to make friends on the internet. I get too scared. So maybe commenting down will be good. Like, subscribe, do all the stuff if you want to. I hope you all have a good day. Thanks for watching. Bye. I've got more notes. Oh, my nose itches so much. He's too caught up in his ass. His head is way up in there, okay? We are an hour in and halfway through. Cool. Making good time. Excuse me, I'm getting all teared up. I can't help it. I like it. I like the pining. I like the angst. Elysium Nights is that is what it's called. Okay, yeah. Spawned. And then we go to Priscilla Contemplates. Ow. I'm sorry, I hope that didn't sound too loud. 4. I'm sorry. My nose is so itchy. God, I hate wiki sites so much. They're always so poor. I mean, he's happy. Hello?